From the Kansas City Sports Update Studios, welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead-update. Join Kris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead-update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom.
How are we doing, everyone? It is Monday, July 8th. Welcome to Kingdom Radio. I hope everyone had a great 4th of July. I know that I did. And as always, we have our senior NFL analyst, Chris-Chavez, with us today. Chris, how are we doing?
Doing fantastic. Had a great 4th of July.
Good deal. And look, as it seems like a trend lately, I've been hiking around Colorado. I can't seem to get out of this place, but I promise I'm getting to training camp. I'm just kind of working my way over that way, but Colorado has my heart here, and I can't help it. I gotta stay here in Colorado for a little bit longer. But anyway, with that being said, look, this is the slowest time in the NFL, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about. And I said on the last episode, and we're really going to do one, maybe 2 episodes a week here coming into training camp, just because I'm, kind of pulling for material, and we don't want to be that broadcast that is reporting about nothing. So we're going to hop right into it here. In our first segment, we're going to talk about the Lamar-Hunt Legacy Seats. And those are a new addition to Chiefs Kingdom to honor a person in the community each game that represents the spirit of Lamar Hunt. And this is a voted-in scenario. So Kansas City, you can get online and you can vote somebody in for one of 2 seats every single Chiefs home game, and they will get recognized in front of Chiefs Kingdom. So, Chris, what do you think of that? Isn't that a really neat a tradition that we're starting here?
I think it's fantastic to be able to give back to the community and the fans who have helped create the tremendous history franchise that is the Chiefs.
Yeah, and it's a scenario that I think it's good for the Chiefs and some of the people in Chiefs Kingdom get acknowledged for their dedication to this franchise. But I wanted to touch base on that because that's something this big that's going on in Arrowhead-Stadium with the new drum deck, which I think is going to be huge. I really like that idea. They're doing some things here in Kansas City, and it's kind of neat to see us change some things up and start some new traditions. So we're going to move into our next segment here, which is the best move in franchise history. And this is a perspective on what do me and Chris think the best move in franchise history is or was. And Chris, I'm going to let you take off with that and start off and tell everybody what you think the best move in franchise history was for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I would have to say that the best move in Kansas City Chiefs history was moving to Kansas City. Because way back when, we had to share the home of Dallas with the Dallas Cowboys, who were already established in the NFL. And if we had ended up staying in Dallas, we would have still had to compete with that market, as well as what would have been the Houston Oilers market as well. And moving to Kansas City, where there was no competition, really allowed for the franchise to thrive and really take root there and to grow.
Man, I really, really love that pick because great minds think alike. That's exactly what I said too, was the Chiefs moving to Kansas City. And to elaborate on what you were saying about that move is the Chiefs ultimately became a part of the NFL and helped create the NFL with the move from Dallas to Kansas City, because when Kansas City were the Dallas Texans, they were part of the AFL. When they moved to Kansas City, that's when the AFL and the NFL merged together, and the Super Bowl era started. So, in my mind, that really is the biggest move in Chiefs history too, is, you know, turning the Texans into the Chiefs, creating the Super Bowl in Kansas City. actually was founded by Lamar Hunt and continuing that tradition to this day. But hey, I can't argue with you on that one. So hey, look, how about this? Since we both had the same pick and the best move, and I want our listeners to know, this isn't pre-scripted. We come, with our topic, and me and him pick a different topic. This was not planned. So I'm going to go with my second pick, which is kind of a no-brainer. Best move in Chiefs history would be Patrick-Mahomes. And so I know this only been a year, but hey, it's been one incredible year. So Chris, let's see what's your second pick, if you had one, for the best move in franchise history.
I 100% agree with you on Mahomes, but I'm going to go a different route because this really helped to define a decade for the Chiefs. Well, more than a decade, but drafting Derek Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's, I think, in Chiefs Kingdom, no matter what platform that you're on when we're talking about the greatest, he is number one. And I can't, that's Marty's pick, Marty's draft pick, and I can't argue with that. I love that. So, yeah, we'll roll out with that, too. And with that being said, look, we're going to move on to our next segment here.
This is the No Look Pass, brought to you by Sean and Keogh Music Solutions, providing everything from simple background audio to complex creative audio pieces. Bring your project to life with Sean and Keogh Music Solutions.
All right, we are here doing the No Look Pass, brought to you by Sean and Keogh Music Solutions, and this is one of my favorite segments in any of our shows. And Chris, I'm sure you enjoy it too. This is a segment where we pick each other's mind and find out what our true football knowledge is. This is not scripted. We want to catch each other off guard or ask each other a question that would be interesting to the audience. And with that being said, I'm going to start off with a no look pass, and I'm going to throw it to you first, Chris. I might have asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again. If you could have either Priest-Holmes or Jamal Charles in their prime on this team right now, which one would you pick?
That's a really tough one. I think I have to go with Priest-Holmes, just because he didn't quite have as many fumbles as Jamal Charles did. He wasn't as elusive, but he was just as big of a threat to take it to the house anytime that he touched the ball. And in Andy Reid's offense, getting him open or into the open field would, I think, only elevate his game to another level that we never really saw back when in Dick Vermeil's offense. And that's no knock against Priest-Holmes. It's just an element that we never really saw in that offense.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to see a Priest-Holmes receiving out of the backfield type of thing. But I think he would probably thrive in that type of system. And I think I'm going to have to go with you on that one too, because I want to be perfectly frank about this. We have a receiving core and a tight end that is by far the best in the league. And I think the only team that really stacks up against us, we're going to touch base on here a little bit later. But I think that if we had Priest running out of the backfield with this offensive line and this receiving threat, he was a running back that he rushed for 80 touchdowns in his career, and Jamal was more of, he was a rushing threat and a receiving threat. He was a home run threat all around, but you're right, he fumbled the ball a lot. And I feel like Priest would thrive more in this. He'd be more like a Kareem Hunt. That's what we are used to and would like to have back with the Chiefs. And I'm going to go with Priest too, because I think he'd run it down everybody's throat behind a Patrick Mahomes-led offense. So, okay, moving on. What's your no-look pass to me?
Okay. If you could bring any former Chief at their peak to come and play on this team, who would it be? But also keep in mind that if you make that switch, you also lose the number one player at that position. So, for instance, if you were to bring in Tony Gonzalez, we lose Kelsey.
Right. Okay, so, boy, I really like that question, and I really think there's only one way to go, and I think this is a no-brainer just because of where our team is all around. I personally, if this was my team, I'd bring Derek Thomas on and put him on this defense, leave the offense alone, pull, who would it be?
Well, it also depends. Are you going to have him at defensive end or linebacker?
Defensive end.
Okay. So probably Frank Clark?
Yeah, but I'd put him on the other side of the ball.
Oh, okay. Then that will, who would that be? The Hammer.
Yep. I'd make it work. I would make it work. I think that's a no-brainer. I'd bring in Derek Thomas and put it on this defense that's been lacking something for a few years. And I ultimately think that would bring a Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs the fastest.
I have to agree, man. That defense with Frank Clark and Derek Thomas on either end, that is easily the scariest bookends on a defense in the league right now.
Oh, yeah. And then you throw Okafor in the linebacking core and then the Honey Badger. Yeah, that would be a tough defense to do anything at all on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
so that is our no-look pass segment for today. I love that. That's my favorite episode, or my favorite segment in the broadcast. But we're going to move on here. We're going to do a receivers breakdown because this is a pretty exciting time to see what our receivers are bringing to the table because, look, like we really, really have a solid wide receiver core. And I'm going to let you take off with that, Chris. What do you think is going on with our receiving core? Is Tyreek Hill out of the shadow and back into full swing? What do we have going on here?
Well, without the NFL having come out and fully defined what will or will not happen to Tyreek Hill, it's kind of hard to really say how many wide receivers we're going to take into the regular season. Historically, Reed has kept 6 on his roster. And so going forward with the premise that Tyreek Hill is going to be suspended a couple games, I'm going to go over a roster prediction of 7 with Tyreek Hill being included. And unfortunately, we're going to probably lose a couple big names, fan favorites, as going into the regular season this year. We really only have 2 absolute locks onto the roster, bringing in Sammy Watkins and McCole Hardman into the regular season, as well as Tyreek Hill, so technically 3. Those guys are definitely guaranteed roster spots. And then Demarcus Robinson is probably going to be the next closest thing to a lock that we have. He's our next most experienced wide receiver in our system. He's been with the Chiefs for 3 years, going into his 4th year. He has 43 receptions, 500 yards, and 4 touchdowns for us.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the starting 3 that are a lock-in for a second.
Sure.
I love all of the input, but I need to break it up a little bit, and let's talk about a little bit of this before we get into because here's the thing. We have 13 wide receivers on our receiving core, and we got to break that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so with McCole Hardman and Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, those absolutely are our top 3. Look, but I want to say, I think Demarcus Robinson's job is in jeopardy because we have players like Marcus Kemp, who is showing big-time talent, Jamal Custis, who's really showing us some things too, and Byron Pringle.
Uh-huh.
So those 3 younger guys, I think that one of them is going to eclipse D-Rod. And to have 13 receivers on our depth chart right now, that's a lot to trim down, before the regular season. And I see somebody really outperforming Demarcus Robinson.
No, and I absolutely think that if it doesn't happen in this preseason, it's definitely going to happen throughout the season. D-Rob right now is pretty much a lock to be the slot receiver. And I think mid-season with Pringle, Kemp, or Cody Thompson, whoever we keep as that sixth wide receiver, or those guys are going to be pushing him to take that third spot. Well, what will be the fourth spot. And I really don't see Robinson in our long-term plans. I just don't see it.
Hey, he's just like what were the two receivers that we Chris Conley, and what was the other receiver that we let go last season?
DeAnthony
Thomas. And I think there was one more as well. But we are very accustomed to, trading the second string receiving talent because our first string does such a great job. When they come into the game, they're always open. So, I feel like Demarcus Robinson is going to go somewhere else and have a career, but I think it's time for us to part ways with him and look for something in Custis, Kemp, or Pringle.
No, I have to agree. We have a lot of really good potential talent at the bottom end of our wide receiver roster. And, I mean, looking at it, we're going to be letting go of some guys and losing them, hoping that they can make it through the cuts and we can squeeze them onto our practice squad. That these guys could go elsewhere and easily be a third or even a second string wide receiver on other rosters throughout the NFL. And to have that sort of depth at the wide receiving core is tremendous for us, especially in our offense.
We really haven't had a deep receiving core in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs up until the last few years. And I don't want to leave out Greg Dieter either. He's another guy that's kind of raising the eyebrows, and I feel like last year he did really well on special teams and came in and did some things, but I don't really see him being a number two behind Watkins. I really see some of these younger guys stepping up because we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5, 6 rookies in our 13-man lineup at the wide receiver position. And I just have a feeling one of them is just going to walk right past Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, Custis probably has the best chance to come in as a rookie and do that. He ended up getting the highest salary that for an undrafted free agent, I want to say the last 5 years. And that's not just for the Chiefs, that's in the NFL. So obviously the Chiefs really see some potential with him. And he's coming in at, I believe, 6'5" inches. Dude's going to be a huge body in the red zone, which we don't really have anybody else. I think the next tallest guy was like 6'2". So that's going to be fantastic. Cody Thompson, everybody that in the Chiefs organization is extremely high on him. Richard Davis, I believe, is coming off of an injury at Michigan State. So if he's healthy, he could really be a major contributor to this offense. And Felton Davis, another guy who had a really big potential coming out of college. And these rookies coming in undrafted, I think in any other draft year probably would have been going in the third or fourth round. The wide receiving core this year was really deep, and we got some steals out of these guys.
I agree. Hey, I forgot about this until you mentioned Richard Davis, because he was the receiver out of Michigan State. I don't think he got injured. What happened with him, he did have a small injury, and he was the one who sat out the bowl game. He sat out the bowl game at Michigan State, and then he got drafted by the Chiefs. I watched a video on this guy, and Richard Davis is an absolute beast, and the weight room as well. I completely forgot that we got him outside of the draft. And you're right, Felton Davis also is another high prospect. And this is the deepest draft the Kansas City Chiefs have ever had at wide receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and like you said a little bit ago, this is probably the best wide receiving core that the Chiefs have ever had, and I have to agree with that 100%, man. These guys are tremendous, and especially in this offense with as much as we pass, to have a weapon that even in a 5-man spread, the 5th wide receiver that we're going to have on the field is going to be arms or head and shoulders better than the cornerback who's going to be covering him. And being able to create those mismatches all over the field is going to be extremely amazing to watch in Andy Reid's offense. And then on top of that, you throw in Travis Kelce as wide receiver, and things just open up. Going back to what you were saying with our top 3 wide receivers, Watkins, Hill, and Hardman, you put those 3 on the field, and any one of those 3 guys can absolutely take the top off of the defense. And let's say, for instance, that you run 2 go routes. That's going to hold the safeties in the center of the field, having to watch play deep. Then you have your slot receiver. You've got Kelce running things underneath against linebackers. Then you got a running back coming out of the backfield against the linebacker. Absolute mismatches all right there. You have to expect huge years for Kelce, for whichever running back we have coming out of the backfield, and our slot receiver. They're going to get a lot of looks and get a lot of yards this year.
I feel like we might have the type of team to where, look, we might be the first team in NFL history to have 3,000-yard receivers, 1,000-yard tight end, and 1,000-yard rusher. And I really think that's a legit scenario with the quarterback that we have, the system that they are all in, and then the depth on top of that. Kansas City, this is a ridiculous set of wide receivers. So let me ask you this. Outside of our top 3 receivers, and I'm going to cross Demarcus Robinson off the list. Outside of our top 3, what would be your pick as the next man up to have 1,000 yards receiving? I'll tell you what. How about 600 yards receiving? And we'll go with that because that's going to be impossible to have another 1,000-yard receiver. But which receiver do you think is going to step up and be our clutch go-to guy outside of our top 3?
I really have to go with Byron Pringle. I heard a lot of really good things about him, and it gets me really excited. Granted, they didn't have pads on, but he's coming off of injury reserve and was out for the entire year. I really think that he's going to be able to step in and have that 600 to 1,000-yard year.
I feel like he's going to be our next Chris Conley because this is a guy that had a year with Patrick-Mahomes and not a year. Okay, he had some time with Patrick-Mahomes and then got put on injured reserves, and they're going to have a whole off season with him. And they said he's doing some nice things there. So I would agree with you on that. When I think Pringle, the hometown kid from Kansas State, I feel like is going to step up and do some big things too. Because look, if you are a wide receiver and you have any inkling of talent and you can make the rotation, look, you should have huge success against every single team because, I mean, there's so much talent across the board, they got to guard everybody, and they can't. There's no way that any team is going to be able to stop the Kansas City Chiefs. The only way that we're going to be stopped is if we stop ourselves.
Uh-huh.
And so, with that being said, hey, look, that's our wide receivers breakdown. We are deep in the wide receiver position. We should feel really good in Chiefs Kingdom about where we are. This is the best scenario in Chiefs history, like Chris and I both said, and really it's the best scenario up and down when you look at our roster in a long, long time. So with that, we're going to move on to the season preview. Each week we break down a team that we have in our schedule this coming up season, and this week it is week 9 with the Minnesota Vikings. It is at Arrowhead-Stadium, and as Chris had said earlier, and I couldn't agree more, this is an extremely talented team with a lot of depth on the offensive side, and this could be a challenge for the Kansas City Chiefs. And let's take off on that, Chris. We're gonna discuss this together, but I'm gonna let you take off, but kind of give me a chance to step in and say a few things.
Sure. So the Minnesota Vikings absolutely have tremendous talent in Dalvin Cook, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph, and then they also brought in a new tight end, Irv Smith Jr., who played for Alabama, and he was tremendous there. We'll still have to see how his game translates over to the NFL level. But at all of their skill positions, these guys are probably on par with the Chiefs as far as starting rotation.
I'd have to agree. And look, Dalvin Cook is an incredible running back, and he blows the doors off of anybody that we have in our backfield. And I think that's the thing that sets the Minnesota Vikings offense apart from the Chiefs. And I'm not giving them the edge because, look, obviously we have Patrick Mahomes and they have Kirk Cousins. But like you said, this is an extremely talented Minnesota Vikings offense that we have to go against, and I think it's going to be the best. This is going to be our Los Angeles Rams game. So what do you have to say about their wide receiving core? Because look, we went in depth about our receiving core. Where does it stack up?
So you look at their depth, and their next leading wide receiver is Laquan Treadwell, who has really underperformed his entire career in Minnesota. And there was an article out a couple weeks ago about how the Chiefs almost took him, and it would have really set us back, just like taking Baldwin a couple years back as well. He never performed for us. Their other wide receiver is Chad Beebe, who, and a bunch of other guys on their depth chart. Other names where it's just a matter of who are these guys. They don't have the depth that we have at wide receiver. So as far as depth goes, I absolutely put us head and shoulders above where they're at. Their top two wide receivers absolutely on par with where we're at. But then there's a huge cliff drop on talent with the rest of their roster at wide receiver.
And yes, and I couldn't agree more, because I would say that we're 3 strings deep when it comes to talent at receiver, when they really just have Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. But they're tied in Kyle Rudolph. This guy is a staple for that team and really doing big things in the NFL. And I would say, he's one of the top 3 tight ends in the league, but I still... I'm going to give Travis Kelce the edge until anybody proves him wrong.
No, absolutely.
So, with that, look, their offense stacks up quite well against us. I think if we were to get in a foot race with this team, which might happen, it really depends on Cousins. Because, look, Cousins is one of those quarterbacks that can come out and have a horrible game for no reason. And so I think that's something that we have to look out for as well. But let's move to the defensive side. Do you think the defensive side of the ball stacks up against the Kansas City Chiefs defense? And look, this is a defense we really haven't seen.
I have to say yes. Their defensive line, linebackers, secondary, they've got some huge names who are, if not perennial Pro Bowlers, are always in the discussion to make the Pro Bowl. And then they have the emergence last year of Danielle Hunter, who did tremendous for them, came out of nowhere. Or Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, these guys are staples on their defensive line. Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, these guys are always shutting down running backs coming out of the backfield, tight ends as well. And then you've got quarterbacks Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes, who came out last year. And these guys are just looking really good. However, you look at their depth, the depth isn't there. And so this is where we're going to be relying on our slot receiver, our fourth receiver to really take advantage of those mismatches.
I think that's where we're going to separate ourselves deep in the game, especially with this team and it being week 9 at Arrowhead. I think we're going to pull away in the fourth quarter of this game. The score is going to look closer than the game actually was. I feel like when we pull away, my final prediction here is the Chiefs are going to win 38-34. But I feel like we're going to pull away late in the third and early in the fourth, and then the score is just going to look a little bit better, on paper than it really is in real life. So what's your prediction on this? Because they match up well on offense, but like you said, all-around depth, I mean, we're way, way deeper in depth than a lot of teams in the NFL. So what's your prediction, Chris?
I very much agree with you as far as it being close through the first 3 quarters. Fourth quarter, we pull away. Going into the fourth quarter, I'm going to think that it's like 31-28, but the game ends up being about 42-31, Kansas City winning. But the game will have been much closer than the score shows.
Do you think we'll have more luck in the receiving game, given their defensive line, or do you think we're going to get it done on the ground?
I think we're going to get it done in the passing game, but it's going to be not our star receivers. This could be the game where McCole Hardman, if he hadn't already, really breaks out, because him coming out of the slot or even the fourth slot at wide receiver, there's nobody really in Minnesota's secondary who can shut him down.
And that is one of those things that Big Red's great over his career at finding the mismatch and exploiting that all game long. So this could potentially be one of those games where one of these younger guys step up, even outside of Hardman, because I think McCole is going to make his name, right away within the first couple games. And this is going to be a game where possibly Byron Pringle has his breakout, because I know it's coming off of injury. There's more. The Chiefs Kingdom doesn't understand how much potential there is in Byron because nobody's got to see it. But I think this could be the game for him. So, look, we're all predicting a Chiefs win. It is at Arrowhead, and that's going to be an exciting game. This is going to be one of the more exciting games in the Chiefs' schedule because it's a defensive-heavy schedule for the Kansas City Chiefs. So this will be a fun one. But with that being said, we're going to talk about the training camp schedule. It starts the 24th of July, but it is not open to the public until the 27th of July and goes through August 15th. And I'm going to go in more in depth when it gets closer to training camp, and we'll talk about that some more, as well as times and events and such. But that really is our episode. One more thing I want to touch base on. Patrick Mahomes will be on Jimmy Kimmel Live on Monday night. Everybody should tune in. I know we like seeing our guy Patrick being recognized on every level. So, Chris, hey, it was a great show. I always love talking football with you, and I can't wait for us to, do our next show. So thanks for being on the show today, Chris.
Likewise, sir. As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hey, not a problem. And Chiefs Kingdom, remember, this is the slowest month of football. And yes, our shows are slowing down a little bit, but things will pick back up here when we get closer to training camp. And Kansas City Sports Update will be at training camp, and so will Kingdom Radio. So tune in, because we'll have a lot of stuff from training camp. I'd like to get some players' opinions on what we're doing here with the Chiefs. We'll see if we can't get some interviews in. So Kansas City, have a great week. It's Monday. You got a long way ahead of you before the weekend, so get to grinding. It was nice to have you all. Thank you for tuning in.
From the Kansas City Sports Update Studios, welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead Update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom. Kingdom. Kingdom.